So here we go with some application of the quotient rule part 2. When I say application, I don't mean the term literally actually, but just how to use the quotient rule. Here's the quotient rule. I'm not going to even bother reading it to you. I'm suggesting, I'm insisting, I'm begging that you memorize this rule. So let's try to find some derivatives. So find the derivative. So let's just go through a couple examples. Find the derivative. The first one is this, is let h of x equal the cubed root of x over x cubed plus 1. I guess the first thing I would do here is write this in a form that's much more differentiable. So the first thing I would do, and this is crucial in calculus, is to be the master of the rewrite. So can you rewrite this in a way that's easier for you to work with? So I'm suggesting to you that this is the same as x to the 1/3. Now I have this in a form where I can use the power rule to find the derivative of this top portion. And the bottom portion was already in pretty good form, so there's that. The second thing I think is really crucial for you to be able to do is be a good list builder. So we know the pieces that we're going to need. We're going to need a g of x, we're going to need an f prime, we're going to need an f of x, and we're going to need a g prime at x. So just build the list of those parts that you're going to need to complete this process. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to say, well, I know that f of x is equal to x to the 1/3 power. If you differentiate f of x, you'll get f prime at x, right? And it is the 1/3 times the 1 out here, so there's that 1/3 x. And remember, we're going to decrement this by 1, so 1/3 minus 1 is actually negative 2/3, right? And then we're going to need g of x, and g of x was given to us, and g of x is this piece right here. So it's x cubed plus 1. And then g prime at x is a derivative here, so it's 3 times 1 here is 3. X, decrement the exponent by 1, which makes that 2, doesn't it? And the first derivative of a constant is 0. So here's our list. Once we have our list, then we're just going to fill in the blanks. So fill in the blanks. This gets really easy because the hardest part about this whole thing, you guys, is definitely going to be the algebra. So let's make sure that we know what we're going to do here. So we recognize this as a quotient rule problem. We know what the quotient rule is. We build a list of the parts that we're going to need to complete this. And now we're just going to start doing the work. So it says we have this. So let's just start differentiating here. Is x cubed plus 1, that's our g of x, times f prime at x, and f prime at x was 1/3 x to the negative 2/3 power, right? Then it says minus f of x was x to the 1/3, I'm just taking it from my list over here, times g of x, and g of x is x cubed plus 1. Oh, I did it wrong, times g prime at x, I'm really sorry. Times 3x squared is g prime at x, isn't it? And then the whole thing over g of x squared, and g of x is x cubed plus 1, and it says formulaically, it says that we're supposed to square that, so that square is this one right here. All right, here we go. So here's some math here. And this part, I admit to you, it really sucks, and I to this very day, this drives me nuts. But this is what you have to do, and what we have to do here is we have to distribute, right? We have to do our algebra here. So I'm going to distribute this. Some help, things that really help me when I do this work here is that this is to the negative 2/3 power. This is to the 3rd power. So that's the same. The 3rd power is the same as the 9/3 power. Why am I doing that? Because now I have common denominators here, because we know when we multiply exponents, we add their values. So it will, when I distribute, and that's what I'm going to do here. That's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to distribute this to here and to here, right? Isn't that what we're supposed to do there? So as we do that distribution, we end up with 1/3 x to the 7/3 power, right? Plus 1/3 x to the negative 2/3 power. Okay? Minus 3x, I'm here now, I'm distributing this piece in here, right? So I'm just going to distribute this to here. I'm going to multiply those two things and simplify them. So when I multiply, there's the negative there. Here's the negative sign. There's the 3, negative 3x, and this is right. X squared. I want this in thirds. Squared in thirds is 6 thirds, isn't it? Is that okay? So 6 thirds. So 1/3 plus 6 thirds is 7 thirds. So the 7 thirds power all over x cubed plus 1 squared. I'm just following the quotient rule formula, right? Now, this is the part, you guys, that you're going to hate this, and I'm sorry to death. Because you look here, and there's a greatest common factor. So we need to take out the greatest common factor. So when you're doing exams, I mean, this is what they're going to show you. So I guess what I would love to convince you of is the only way to get through this is just to embrace it and just say, this is what I have to do. And take my word for it. You get 100% better at it. The more you do it, the easier it gets. And at some point, you're like, I'm okay with this. But for now, it kind of sucks, so I'm begging you, hang in there. I find that the greatest common factor of this is 1/3 x to the negative 2/3 power. I'm just going to rebuild everything. So it's x cubed, right? X cubed, that would be same as x cubed would be 9 thirds. 9 thirds times this would give me my 7 thirds back if you're looking for my work, right? Plus 1, right? Because this times 1 gives me this piece back, doesn't it? Minus, so I have to 1/3 times 9 is 3, isn't it? And I need 7 thirds power, so it's going to be to the third power also. Now if that's bothering you, look at this for a second. Third power is the same as 9 thirds. I'm going to erase this in a second, but 9 thirds. So this times this, you add this negative 2/3 plus 9 thirds is 7 thirds. You see it? Negative 1/3 x to the negative 2/3 times 1 is this piece back. 1/3 x to the negative 2/3. Well, 1/3 times 9 is 3. X to the, well, there it is. Right? X to the negative 2/3 times x to the 9 thirds is 7 thirds again. All right. Remember, 9 thirds is the same as 3. So as I simplify it, it looks like this. I know it looks like hell. I'm sorry. There's just no way around it. This is the algebra part, and we're going to have to suck it up and do the algebra, right? Okay. If there was another way to do it, I'll tell you. And that's why there's a comment bar at the bottom. If you can find some easier way, God knows, I'm dying to know. All right. Then we're going to simplify this piece out right here, right? So let's simplify. This is the part where your algebra skills really come into play. And if you're thinking your algebra skills suck, they can get better. So please don't give up on that. So I'm going to just combine these like terms. We have x to the third here, 9x to the thirds here, which is negative 8x's to the thirds. I'm going to put this in order. You'll see why in a second. Plus 1. So this piece plus this piece is this piece, and then there's the 1. I'm just putting it in order to make it look better. And then if you think about this for a second, this whole thing goes down, doesn't it? So we get 3x to the positive 2/3, right, times x cubed plus 1 squared. And that x cubed plus 1 squared is this one right here. All I'm doing is bringing that over, all right? And that, you guys, is my final answer. So what was easy, what was difficult? Hopefully the easy part is memorizing this, putting it into the right positions. And what kind of sucks about it is when you get to here and you feel like, oh, okay, I'm done, start factoring. All right, let's try to get one more done. We have time, I think, to do one more. So let's get one more done if you don't mind. So in this one, if you don't mind, I think I'm going to take a trig problem. I think is what I chose to do. And this is a quick problem, and the key to this problem. So find g prime at x if g of x is equal to sine of x. That's an x, guys. That's an x. X over x squared. Again, we're gonna use the quotient rule. So we're gonna build a list. So list the parts that you're gonna need, and you're gonna need f of x, and f of x is equal to sine of x, isn't it? And then what's f prime at x, and how would you know that? But to memorize it, in the first derivative of sine of x is actually cosine x. G of x, we can look in the denominator there and see that it's x squared, and of course we can take the derivative of x squared using the power rule and find that it's 2x, right? Then we just start building our pieces here. So g prime at x is equal to x squared times the first derivative there, so cosine x, right? Remember that x squared times cosine x is not cosine x cubed. You can't multiply this x and this x, okay? I'm using the quotient rule, and the quotient rule says the next thing I should do is put a subtraction sign. Then we're going to take f of x, which is sine of x, isn't it? Sine of x, and multiply it by the first derivative of g of x, which we know is 2x, which is 2x, right? Which is 2x. All over, we know that g of x is x squared, so we had x squared squared, whoops, sorry about that, x squared squared, and we know that x squared squared is really easy math to do, so we're going to actually do that little piece of math and make that into x to the fourth power. If it's like binomials are down there and you're supposed to square them, my advice to you is don't actually do that math until you find that there's some good reason to do it. All right, from here, we're going to simplify. In this case, we're going to be looking for the GCF here. And the greatest common factor, look, this has x squared here. This has two x's, so we can factor out an x, right? So we get g prime at x is equal to x times x cosine x minus 2 sine of x, right? All over x to the fourth. We can simplify x to the first over x to the fourth. These are factors. Remember, we can't cancel add-ins. We can't cancel add-ins that way. But this is a factor. It's this times this, so this can simplify in x to the first power over x to the fourth power is x to the third power. So here's our x to the third power, and this one goes away. And I believe you guys, we have an answer. All right. So what do? Make sure you have the quotient rule memorized. Right, order matters because there's a negative sign in it, right? Build a list. Build a good list. Fill in the blanks. Do your algebra. Take your time. Simplify as much as possible. And remember, when we get to trigonometric functions, that you have to have these derivatives memorized. You're not going to be able to figure it out on the AP exam, okay? All right, good work. Good work.